All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Dipti Borkar, VP and GM at Microsoft, responsible for our strategic ISVs and our Fabric data development experiences. With me is my awesome co-speaker, Monica Boris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Boris. I am Group Program Manager for the data development team in Fabric, owning the features you're going to see today.
Awesome. So before we get started, a quick poll with a show of hands. How many of you here are developers? All right. That's great. Well, you're here at Build, right? It's a show for developers. Great to see. How many data engineers? All right. A few more. Data architects, perhaps? All right. And then how many of you work with data? That was a trick question. Thank you so much. Well, here's a quick agenda of what we're going to take you through today. We have two new items in Fabric, the API for GraphQL, as well as user data functions. We'll take you through what they are, as well as real-world examples using our favorite company, Contoso Outdoors, and we'll walk you through an example and demos. And then we'll close it off with some resources and takeaways. Now, for our Contoso Outdoors introductions. Hello, everyone. I'm Dipti Borkar. I am actually the manager for our internal applications team. We build data-centric apps, and it's an awesome team. I also have Monica here. Monica?
I am Monica. I am data engineer and data API developer at Contoso Outdoors, and Dipti is my boss.
All right, so we'll see how it goes today, all right? Now, with that, as you might know, Contoso Outdoors is a retail company, right? And given we work with data, our analytical systems, of course, use Fabric. If you haven't heard about it yet, you should have, and there's a lot of resources out there. And this is our solution architecture for our backend. So our sales data lives in the sales warehouse that you see here. We've populated it using a data pipeline. And then we also have our inventory data, partner inventory in another warehouse, which has another set of tables. Now, we're working on an internal portal. Our planning team wants to use this information from the analytical systems and make it available. This is sales data, revenue data, inventory data, and they need this immediately. So, Monica, I need your help here because I think we're not going to be on time for this project.
I think I can help. There is a new API for GraphQL item in Fabric that can definitely help with this problem. Would you believe me if I told you that we can fetch all the data for our portal with just one API call?
One API call? Not really. I don't think so. I mean, this is our application here. We've built out the UX. We've built the front end. We have some mock data in there. So that's not really real data. And the back end needs to be built out. But you're saying it's really easy. So maybe you can walk us through how we can get there?
Of course. Let me show you how this works in Fabric. So our API for GraphQL will take care of fetching the data from Fabric, from our data warehouse, and also from our other warehouse, which is our partner inventory, and provide it to our portal, all with the power of GraphQL.
Well, from what I remember, a GraphQL server managing it is really complicated, right? So you have to get the configuration done, then the schema discovery or the definition needs to be done. You have the resolvers, you have, of course, security, a range of things. It's complicated, right?
Yes, it is. But it's not complicated anymore.
OK.
Not in Fabric. And I'm going to show you why.
All right.
Before we get there, just another quick show of hands. How many people are familiar with GraphQL? All right, that's great to see. But before we go into the details, let me share a few things about GraphQL for those who might not be familiar. GraphQL is a popular query language and runtime for data APIs. It is built upon REST technology. But instead of having multiple endpoints, you have one single intelligent endpoint that lets you fetch only the data that you care about. The schema it is decoupled and abstracted away from the underlying data sources schema, which makes this more resilient and flexible. And speaking of the schema, it exposes types and fields which correspond to your tables and columns in your database. Relationships are for joins, queries are for retrieving data, and mutations are for creating, updating, and deleting data. So now, that being said, let me show you how it all works in Fabric, because today we are announcing
API for GraphQL, now in public preview. It's a complete SaaS experience, as you would expect. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. Range of data sources that we support, and it's all Fabric native. So if you move on to the next slide, you'll see here that GraphQL sits on top of all our data sources that Fabric supports. So lakehouses, warehouses, all of the mirrored databases. This can be Azure SQL DB, it can be Cosmos DB, or even Snowflake. And so now you have a very easy API on top of all of these data sources that you can expose to any endpoint applications, any applications at all. All of this is SaaSified. You will see the experience in just a minute. And more importantly, the security and the governance is built in. All of it is integrated into the Fabric portal, and the capacity model uses the CU billing model. So it's an expansion of our existing Fabric model, and it would use it. Now, what GraphQL allows you to do is essentially abstract away the complex database schemas that you might have, because every database, every data source, data warehouse might have a completely different schema. And this abstracts away that complexity, creates a new intelligent API for you on the top that you can then access within your application. So let's see it in action, Monica.
That's right. Let's start by creating a new GraphQL API item in Fabric. As you know, all we need to do is give it a name, and we will be ready to attach a data source. In our case, it's our Contoso sales warehouse. As you can see, Fabric automatically discovers the schema, which lets you expose only what you want. And it automatically creates the GraphQL API schema, all the types, all the fields based on the data source you selected. You can further inspect its properties. You will see that queries and mutations are automatically created and added to the schema. You can further update the schema if you want without impacting the underlying data source structure. So let's go ahead and create our first query for the customers type, and let's select a few of its fields. Let's say customer ID, first name, and last name, and run this query right here in the Fabric portal. And the results are immediately returned. We can even further filter or decide to just return the first few rows, let's say the first 10, and we can rewrite and we see that only those many rows were returned. Notice how easy it is to use the query editor in the Fabric portal. It supports IntelliSense and auto-completion. I barely had to type anything. It's that simple.
All right. Well, it seems really easy and simple. You have the customer's information here, but we also have our orders, which is in a completely different table, Monica. So it's a little bit more complicated. Can you show us how we could do that?
That's right. And in T-SQL, we would do this with joins, but in GraphQL, we need to use relationships. So in the Manage Relationship dialog in Fabric, we will create a new relationship between the customer type and the sales order header on the common customer ID field, and we will pick one-to-many cardinality. And once the relationship is created, we will see that a new field has been added to the customer type to denote this relationship. And we can then just add that field to our query and then select a few of its properties such as sales order ID and maybe order date, and why not total due? And we are ready to run it again. And there you have it. Now we have order details information for every customer. And this will help fill that table grid in our portal.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, maybe we can see all this data. It's, now it's real world data. It's not made up data. Maybe we can see it within the application.
Oh yes, it's very easy. But first, remember, this is the query we have created and we're going to use to populate that table. Notice how simple the query language is. This makes it very, very easy for any client application to fetch only the data it needs, nothing less, nothing more. So let's go to our application, which right now it's empty because I removed all the hard-coded data. And first thing we'll have to do is to copy this endpoint for our GraphQL API from the Fabric portal and paste it in our code. This is where all the magic happens. So also we're going to have to paste the query that we wrote. And with this, we'll have to form a post request to this URL with the query as body in JSON format and issue a fetch. Let's save this and see if it worked. And there you have it. Our React portal automatically gets populated with the data returned by our API.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's still just a single API. What we've seen here is you've been able to get the tables, so the customer data from the customer tables, as well as the order table. We've used relationship for the join that we would have done in SQL, and now it's all populated. But we still have some missing charts up there, and so it's a little bit more complicated. We need aggregated data, right? So we want the top 10 selling products. We want some monthly revenue numbers. Let's keep going, Monica. This is sounding like it's really easy.
Yes, and we're getting really close. And in the data warehouse in Fabric is very powerful for aggregating data. So I'm just going to leverage that, and I'll create a view and a store procedure for aggregating data. And here is, our view just returns the total revenue per month. And because it returns data, the GraphQL API just exposes this as a query that we can just add. However, the store procedure that I implemented, it's called top n products, and it returns the top n products. It takes a integer variable. So it returns these top n products by name and quantity sold. This is very cool. Because this store procedure returns data, Fabric automatically detects that, and it exposes it as a query. Now, if it would have updated data, it would have exposed it as a mutation. So this query I can just use like before, but moreover, if I want to make this a dynamic query, I can use a variable for n. This is how I'm going to use it in the code anyway. I don't like to hard code things. And I can test it in the portal by giving a value for n. So these two queries will be now be part of our one API request as well. And they will populate our two charts in our
That's
portal.
Great. That's great. So we've seen just simple queries. We've seen relationships. Now you're saying we support views and stored procedures as well within GraphQL. But it's a little bit more complicated because if you remember our solution architecture, we have another warehouse. So we have partner data that's sitting somewhere else, and we need to get that and access that one as well. So it's going to be harder, right?
That's right, but not really.
Okay.
You don't have to create a new API or anything like that. All we have to do is to add that other warehouse, which is our partner inventory, to the schema, just like before, select the table that we want. And as you can see, it has been added to the API schema and we have the inventory type that we can easily query for. In the editor, just add it to our total query with a few of its items, name and quantity. And now, maybe also return the first 10 or so, and we will be ready to run this entire query and get the results with the power of GraphQL from multiple data sources in just one request.
Wow. All right. That was really awesome. Let's see, how it all works and see it in action.
Sure. I mean, all we have to do is just update this query in the code, and we will be ready to see the application pull the data. Our users will just authenticate using Entra authentication, and our UI elements in React will automatically get populated with the data returned by our one API call. Note that Entra ID is supported out of the box. You don't have to manage any secrets or any credentials. The tokens are being passed through all the way to the API and to the underlying data sources. Yep.
All right. So this is great, but I almost forgot. Now that you've shown me the full application sort of populated here, I see some incorrect data there. And our planning team probably wants to go in and update and fix that incorrect information. So is that called a mutation? Is that right?
Yes.
Does that work?
Use a mutation
to
update data, and I'm going to show you how easy that is. We're going to update data for the inventory type. And for that, we're going to use one of the automatically generated mutations, which is called update inventory. We also have mutations for creation, deletion as well. So let's build this request for product with the ID, let's say 879, and let's update its quantity field for, let's give it 57.
Okay.
And return the results, and we'll be ready to execute this. And this actually updates the data in our warehouse. We can even verify that it was updated by running a query that retrieves the exact item that we updated by the primary key, which is the product ID. And we can see the value is updated as expected.
That's awesome. Monica's doing really well here. I am very happy with this application. Thank you so much for your help in building this, Monica. And so, folks, as you've seen here through this demo, if you click on GraphQL, the API for GraphQL is extremely rich, right? What you saw through this entire experience is, number one, it's quick creation, complete SaaS experience. Everything's in the portal. We support queries, mutations, relationships, which is the equivalent of joins, as well as we have the intelligent editor with IntelliSense. We've already created mutations, simple mutations for you that you could use. It works with a range of data sources. So it works on warehouses, lake houses, all of our mirror databases, and again, that's SQL, Cosmos, and Snowflake. And as others get added on, it will just work with any other mirror database with the T-SQL endpoint that gets created for it. Now, it's also Fabric native. And what that means is what you expect out of the rest of Fabric, you should expect out of our GraphQL API. The pass-through that you saw with the Entra ID is very seamless, so you don't actually have to store any sort of special secrets, etc. All of that is handled for you. And the lineage works, the security and governance is taken care of, and also we will use CU billing, which will kick off in a couple of months based on the capacity model. So very excited for all of you to try it out in public preview here at Build. And now it's back to Contoso Outdoors.
Yes.
So our application, our internal app was a very big hit. A lot of people are actually using it internally. And now they want more. You know, they like having this analytical application that's powered by all of this data that's in Fabric. And 𝗦𝗽𝗀, now they actually need information to sort of look ahead. So they want to use predictive analytics, and they want to have you know, analysis on all of the historical data, and then predict what the revenue might look like. So this is going to be a lot more complicated than your GraphQL API, but hopefully you have something in your pocket that you can pull out.
Yes, indeed, indeed. That would require us to implement some custom business logic that uses some of our internal libraries that we've implemented to calculate these type of predictions. And we'll have to integrate this custom business logic with the rest of our solution in Fabric. Now, luckily, there is a new feature in Fabric called user data functions that will make this a breeze.
All right.
So here is the updated architecture for our application. As I mentioned, we're going to use user data functions in Fabric to read the data from our orders table, from our warehouse, and feed that to our internal sales projections library, which will calculate the revenue projections for the rest of the year. And then also from our user data function, we're going to write the data back to the warehouse, where via GraphQL, it will be fed back to our portal. And all this will be kicked off by our data pipeline periodically. As data is coming in, the projections will be calculated, and the data will always be up to date.
And voila, we are also announcing a sneak peek of user data functions. It's a new item type within Fabric. Here you can bring in your reusable code, right? You might have a lot of business logic that actually sits outside Fabric that you want to pull in, use via your pipelines, maybe update your data sources, invoke it through event streams and various different mechanisms. So same SaaS experience, works in a range of data sources and Fabric native. In addition, we are introducing a functions hub. So this is your go-to place to see all your functions, and that would be your entry point. You can create new functions. You can discover and collaborate on these within the functions hub, and then even drill down into each function to see what data sources are being invoked, and perhaps even collaborate on that function and share it out. So we will have a range of different items that allow the invocation of a function. We're starting off with pipelines, and you'll see that in action in just a bit. And then the Functions Hub is a horizontal experience across all of the other personas, like data engineering, etc., all working on a range of different data sources as well. So warehouses, lake houses, and mirrored databases. Now, you can have a lot of reusable code, so it's more maintainable. It's collaborative, and you will have the same security governance experience that you get with Fabric. Also, it's part of our capacity model. So we've expanded that further. CU Billing will kick this off and get you going. So with that, back to Contoso, perhaps you can maybe show us an example of what a Fabric function, a data function might look like.
Yeah, it's very simple. As you can see, all you need to provide are the input parameters and the output type, then implement your logic, and that's pretty much it.
All right.
So yeah, let me now quickly jump into the Fabric portal and show you this in action. So we're going to go ahead and create a new user data functions item. Again, just provide it a name, and we'll be ready to create a new function. This is a sample function Fabric creates for us automatically called Hello Fabric. We can inspect the code. As you can see, it takes a string argument, and it returns a welcoming string. It can also be tested right here from the portal by supplying a value for the parameter, let's say Monica. And there it is. That's the output. Moreover, we can take a look at logs from previous runs of the function, and that's very, very useful for troubleshooting later.
All right, well, this seems simple, right? Create, and there's a great experience for our developers to go in and debug, test it out, even see the invocations. But our code is a little bit more complicated, right? And we're using our sales warehouse, predictive analytics, right? Come on, it's got to be complicated.
Indeed, indeed. And let me show you an example of what a more complex user data function is, hence the name. This example right here reads data from a warehouse that's identified by this employee's alias. So note that in Fabric, you don't have to worry about connection strings. You don't have to worry about secrets or anything. You are given a connection for the data source that you select. And with that connection, you can just read the data, then implement your logic to validate it, to augment it, anything that makes sense for your application, and then even write it back. This makes it very, very easy and developer-friendly to implement custom business logic in Fabric. All right. So now let me show you exactly how we would go about implementing such a more complex function in Fabric. First thing that we need to do is to select which data source we want to use, consume. In our case, of course, it's our Contoso sales warehouse. So as you can see, we have that alias that is used in the code, automatically selected for us. Now, let's open in VS Code. Note here that we have a new experience, a new extension in VS Code that's dedicated to Fabric. Here, you can log into Fabric, select one of your workspaces, inspect all your items you have. You can even create new items. You can take actions that are specific to those. And we also have an experience that's dedicated to user data functions that make implementation and local development experience a breeze. I have added two new user data functions here. One just reads data from the warehouse and performs some very simple validation. And this other one is the one that calculates the projections. It invokes our internal library. And that, with the data returned from that, we just connect to the warehouse and write the data back to the warehouse. So now let's start debugging. As you can see, we have here an experience that makes it very easy to run functions locally, pick the one that I want to execute, provide an input variable value, hit breakpoints, inspect local variables, everything you'd expect from your usual debug sessions. Once I am happy with how it works, why it returns, we will be ready to deploy this to Fabric using help from the Fabric extension in VS Code. And once it's published back to Fabric, I can go back to the portal, and there are my new functions that I've just created. I can see the updated code. I will be able to execute. They're all ready to go up and running.
That was very, very easy. Maybe we can see it now integrated into the application as well.
Of course. So like I mentioned before, this will be invoked by our data pipeline. So data functions, user data functions in Fabric are really deeply integrated natively with the rest of the Fabric ecosystem. And they can be easily invoked from pipelines or also other items in Fabric, for example, event streams as destinations, or even real-time triggers, many other Fabric items. But for pipelines, all we have to do is add an activity of type functions, give it a name, and then we're going to update its settings to point to the workspace, the item, and the specific function we want to invoke, which is our sales projections. We can even provide values for its arguments. And this could be, pipeline variables, output from other activities, anything that you can compose in the pipeline expression builder. And that's how easy it is with the deep integrations between user data functions and the rest of the Fabric ecosystem.
Great. This looks like a very seamless integration. We showed pipelines here, and now this is our application. So is that a new button?
Yes. Our planning team wants to see the projections in the portal easily. So we've added a button that when they will click it, a new chart is going to be added and populated with the data that the function wrote back into our warehouse. And that is how easy it is to create, not only very simple connections to the data in Fabric, but even further powerful custom business logic within Fabric with user data functions and GraphQL.
Got it. Well, don't worry about that downturn and upturn. We're a seasonal company, so it's all
outdoors,
good. It's
so
all
yeah.
good here. But functions data functions are now available in private preview. It's a sneak peek that we gave you here today, but we're looking forward to many of you trying it out and giving us feedback. As you saw with the demos, it's really a very seamless experience. So it's all SaaSified within the portal. It's easy to create. You have a very simple programming model, so there's no complex headers, etc. Very, very simple with parameters that can be passed in. We have VS Code integration, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. You saw Python here, but we also support C#, and there will be more that we add over time. And so this gives you a broad range for your developers, depending on whichever language they're more comfortable with. In addition, they work with Fabric data sources. Similar to GraphQL, you have data warehouses, lake houses, as well as our mirrored databases. And all of this these UDFs will be invocable from a range of other Fabric items. So we're starting off with pipelines because that's a very, very common scenario and ask as well, so that you can have your business logic, your own logic sort of embedded within a pipeline to do whatever, whether it's predictive analytics or whether it's something else. You might have existing libraries that can be used as well. Now, in terms of the local experience, what you also saw is a brand new extension for Fabric. And this includes the workspaces that seamlessly now can be used within VS Code. So if you take a look at this, you see here that you can pick your workspace, whichever workspace you would like to use. So you enter it here. We used the Contoso Outdoors workspace that we had within the application. And once the workspace is selected, you have all of your items within that workspace that actually shows. So you see the Fabric, the logo on the left, that essentially is the Fabric extension for VS Code. So this is also in private preview. Once you click on a particular item, you can then go and get more information about it. Here is functions, the functions experience within VS Code. You see the hello Fabric that we have to get you started. But of course, you can write your own functions that then can be published back into your workspace within the Fabric portal. So when you click on a particular data function on the function set, which has a range of functions defined underneath, you can then click Publish to Fabric, and all your local code gets synced back to the portal and is available to run via other items. So it's very seamless experience, of course. So when you're coding, you really need a local experience. So this completes the local dev loop end-to-end and allows for debugging, testing locally in your environment itself. So super excited about the extension along with the functions as well. So private preview for functions as well as the VS Code extension is now open. I'm going to just be quiet for a moment and let you take a let you pick up the QR code here. We have a lot of interest in this, and really looking forward to your feedback, so that in the next few months we can iterate over it and also decide on what the roadmap looks like in terms of what other integrations should follow right after that. And so with that, we have a range of resources available. The slides will be available to you as well. We have a blog post for each of these new items that you can read to learn more about. We have documentation, and then we have some links to contact us, and we'll be looking forward to your engagement and to your feedback. And with that, thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed this interactive presentation. Big shout out to the team. We have folks on our chat online as well, and the entire Fabric Data Dev team. It's been quite the journey in pushing these out, as it is with every project. And like Contoso Outdoors, the project ran really well, and so did our items. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you so much. Is there a question?
Maybe
yes.
Questions? Yeah. I'm curious about source control and lineage. So the idea of a mutation at an API going back to the warehouse, how is that change tracked or regulated, I guess?
Yeah, so lineage will be supported just like with any other Fabric item. So you'll be able, of course, to take advantage of all the governance, the usual governance functionality that is built into Fabric.
Awesome. And then it looks like through VS Code we could use Git source control like we're used to, something like that.
That is absolutely on the roadmap.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, cool.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, that is absolutely
Great question.
supported, and that is part of what makes this such a powerful solution. You can bring in your own libraries and packages.
Yeah, so just to repeat the question for the folks online, if you have existing packages or libraries, can they be pulled in into functions? And Monica, the answer is
yes.
Yes, yeah. So it's all supported. You can pull them in, especially with Python. We expect there to be a lot of libraries that you might want to pull in, and it would work for that. Yeah.
Yeah. More
yeah,
questions?
Go ahead.
Can we define our own mutations in GraphQL?
Repeat the question.
So if you can define your own mutation in GraphQL. Not at this point. We have only the automatically generated mutations and queries. But you can, yeah, so the way you can do it is by creating your stored procedures in your underlying data sources and then using GraphQL on top of that. So that is for the time being. Yeah.
At the back?
One more question? That is on the roadmap as well. Yeah.
I was trying it out, and I couldn't really figure it out, but I got not supported, and I didn't know what wrong with it.
Yeah, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to work with you to get you unblocked.
Yeah, so for folks online, the question was around service principals for GraphQL. So that is on the roadmap. Right now, it's essentially passed through Entra ID, and other mechanisms will come in the future.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, folks.
Really great questions.
Have a great rest of the
day.